Good morning and welcome, friends. I just want to give you a wave because you're all a little bit far away from me. I want to say first and foremost that this is important because this has never happened before, right? So welcome to today's Meet the Festival. We've got special programming today. Welcome to Black Like Me, past, present, and future, behind the Stratford Festival Curtain. Here we go. Before we begin, though, I do want to touch on comments. So this is a live stream event, and the comments are live with it. We, at this time, cannot see those live comments, but we do have dedicated personnel at the festival collecting them for us, and we hope to respond to and engage with those in the days following this live stream. My name is Beck Lloyd, and I'll be moderating today. My time with the festival began just in 2019, and I was training with the Birmingham Conservatory, along with my wonderful cohort, some of which are here today. And 2020 would have been my very first season here. But because of the training program, I did get to live in Stratford for 7 months, and I got to know it at its most wintry dress. Today, though, isn't just about my experiences. Today is about a group of people who are coming together to talk to us about their experiences. For me, I wasn't sure if this role was for me as moderator because I'm one of the lucky ones, I've been told. But that's the problem, isn't it? The fact that my lighter skin makes me lucky. But as a Black woman, I have learned to cover up. I have learned that if I do not wish to stand out, there is extra work that I have to do. I've learned to act small because some people are going to be mad that I'm in the room and they don't wear labels. I've learned to shrug it off when I'm passed a note in rehearsal that says, I know why you got the part. And I've learned to tame my hair and watch my tan audition season. I've learned to navigate the workplace, Joe jobs, in a world where certain political appetites put me at risk because drunk supporters can be dangerous when I'm closing up at 3 a.m. And I've learned to be palatable, to grocery shop in cottage country and play tennis at the club. I've learned to only wear my hoops on certain occasions because those hoops tell a certain story on my body. My body tells a story that I'm not necessarily always in on. My brother does not wear a sign around his neck, warning strangers and teachers and neighbors and armed officers that he is dangerous. This is a story that was put around his neck for him, right? But we know what that story is. And because we know, we are responsible for changing that story now. And that's what today is. And I'm so excited. Like I said, today is not about my experience, but today is about going behind the curtain at the Stratford Festival and meeting these 9 beautiful artists who will bravely take us where we need to go, which is Stratford's past, present, and most importantly, Stratford's future. 5 days ago, the Stratford Festival displayed its allyship via an Instagram post, which a lot of us saw. 4 days ago, ACT, a coming together, this group was contacted and after negotiation, offered a 2-day Instagram and Twitter takeover, as well as a Meet the Festival slot. 3 days ago, the festival participated in hashtag Blackout Tuesday. 2 days ago, 72 hours of Black testimonials began on the Stratford Instagram, and hashtag in the dressing room began trending on the festival's Twitter page, and at one point was number 24 trending in the country. Yesterday, Black artists with varying relationships with the festival met on a 3-hour Zoom call to discuss panel topics and specifics. It was a time to take our space, to air everything. It was our room with our voice, and it was a time to let go. And today is a call to action and not a one-week wonder. So with that, I want to meet, and I want the world to meet our panelists. So I would love it if you folks would tell us your name, your relationship with the festival, and how does it feel to be here today? So Evie, why don't you start us off?
Beck, you got me. My name is E.B. Smith. I am currently in what would have been my 10th season with the Stratford Festival. I came here in 2010 as a member of the Birmingham Conservatory, the Chicago Fellow, and I have remained an American ever since. But 10 years in Canada has taught me a lot about this place and about these people. It's a good group of people, which is why I'm hopeful that this work that we're doing today and all this week will have an enormous impact on the festival and the industry at large. I'd like to take a second to recognize why we're here today. It's really important that we understand as artists and as supporters of the arts that all of this began because Black bodies are not safe, because Black bodies have been treated as economic tools, treated as super predators, treated as Beck says, a threat, and policed as such. And we have died at the hands of systems of white supremacy for the duration of our existence on this continent. So, as we have this discussion today, let's remember that the arts serve as an advocate for all of us, no matter what skin color you are, no matter where you're from, no matter your religion, creed, ethnicity. We are here because we all need a voice, and platforms like the Stratford Festival are powerful. The festival draws roughly 500,000 individual visitors a year. In my tenure here, we have sold in excess of 1 million tickets a year at times. That can't be discounted as a platform. So thank you for this platform, Stratford. I hope this is not the last time. I hope this dialogue continues long after I'm gone from the festival and well into the tenure of all of our successors. So thank you.
Thanks so much, E.B.
I'll go next.
Awesome, thank you.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in. My name is Amaka Ume, and I also began my journey with the Stratford Festival in 2019. In September, I joined the Birmingham Conservatory for Classical Theatre, along with Beck and Ngabo. And this was to be all of our debut seasons at the festival. I was to play Hamlet, directed by Peter Pasek, and Anne Boleyn in Wolf Hall. And before that, the Stratford Festival was kind of outside my reach, to be honest. It was not a place that I ever thought I would be, let alone lead at. And it's interesting to be here now. I was thinking about, you know, being the embryo in my mom's womb back when I was conceived and born in Lagos, Nigeria. And, you know, the journey to come to Canada at all is one of hope, is one full of promise. You know, this is a gentle place to live, full of opportunity. And in some ways it does live up to that. You know, it's not lost on me how lucky and how grateful I am to be here, but you know, there have also been hurdles and hoops and obstacles at every step of the way since my family made the difficult decision to uproot ourselves and bring everyone over here. So I'm so glad E.B. mentioned the reason why we are here. Unfortunately, it's police brutality and the ensuing rage that has caused, you know, the Stratford Festival to take note and allowed us to gather here and use this platform. So I do feel loss here. I do feel grief here. I don't want to be sitting here talking about this because of what has happened, but I am hopeful that this forum begins a series of incredible revolution, and so I'm really happy to be part of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone jump right in.
Hello, everybody. My name's Alan Louie, and I'm an actor at Stratford and have been a member of the Croft Festival Company for 3 years. This is my 6th year working in Canada. I am an American of Haitian descent, and my parents were immigrants, single mom, and the last thing she wanted me to be was an actor. When that started happening for me, it became clear that that was definitely a failing on my part to want something more than a medical degree or some sort of degree in a field that would represent for my parents a kind of state of grace. A representation of the culture that was more worthy. So being an artist was definitely not the choice for an immigrant parent. And it's not something that they would want their child to desire. But I was strong-headed, just like my mom, and I wanted to prove them wrong. So here we are. And it's been an amazing career, and it's been said already, it was full of slings and arrows of outrageous fortune. But the most outrageous was navigating my Blackness and in the arts. It was something that it's not taught. While I was being taught Linkletter and Spolin and how to use my voice and how to leave my accent behind, I found myself, oddly enough, and I didn't know it at the time, that I was somewhere between Ariel and Caliban. That if I learned how to speak like the colonizer, then I would have a chance. But unfortunately, once I arrived to that country, it didn't matter. I was still a Black man. Now, being from America, I understood that, and I understood that was something that I needed to navigate clearly. And having immigrant parents who went through so much, they taught me that it was possible, that there are ways, but you've got to be crafty about it. So when this panel put itself together, I found myself laying flat, laying horizontally, because it felt like I'd heard all of this so many times, and here we are again, and it was exhausting to hear it. And it's a young panel. They're younger than me. But I find myself galvanized by this group and by the recent incidents in the States that are not recent to me. I've seen it. I've felt it. I've been on the end of it. Except I didn't have a cell phone then, and there was no one to call or no one to see it. Theater for me is both, my job, I feel, in the theater is to redefine both presentation and perception of Shakespeare, of the colonizer's work. That's what I was taught growing up. That whatever they throw at you, you rearrange your mind so that you can keep walking with your head up. That is the immigrant state of mind. So I applied that to the theater. I've been hard to work with. I've been difficult. I've been fired for having a voice. Caliban would not learn to speak the colonizer's words, yet Ariel wanted to be part of. Peter Brook was asked in a New York Times article, it was suggested that he was the pioneer of gender and colorblind casting. And when that was suggested, he got angry. He said, quote, "It's not colorblind, it's color rich." With this political statement, we close our eyes to these differences. And for me, it's the opposite. We should open our eyes to the richness of life. It's not marvelous to be blind, to have your eyes, but to have your eyes wide open. And at this moment, our eyes are wide open. And I encourage you to open your eyes. Until the lion learns to speak, the tales of hunting will always favor the hunter. We have learned to speak. Thank you for being here. We really appreciate your time. And I also hope that this conversation continues.
Thank you
We have
so much.
That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm feeling the tempest winds.
I'd like to speak next. Thank you for that. That was beautiful. I think because, hi, I'm Erica Croft, and my relationship with the festival is a long one. It's my 21st season this year. I'm from Toronto, Scarborough, Ontario, and I'm here to bear witness. I'm a mother. My son was in the acting company. I bear witness to the racism in the workplace. I bear witness to the racism behind on stage, behind the scenes, in the green rooms, in the dressing rooms. I see it multiple times a day, and I live with that, and they're all packed in here. Every single one of them. Every time you all were tokenized, minimized, invisibilized, I watched. I remember it all. So I'm here to bear witness as a responsibility, as a mother representing the mothers of the future Black stars of this stage. I've given 2 of my children to this stage. Both of my children have been on the festival stages, and my family has given everything they've ever had to us. And the rewards that I have been given back have been pain and a legacy of dismissal, abuse, and all of that. It's going to take some time to unpack all that. And that's why I'm here. Let us unpack that and see if we can create a new future for Max and Olivia and the rest of our children and all of the mothers who've lost their Black children. That's it.
Thank you so much, Erica. We're so happy you're here. It's so important that you're here.
I'll go next.
Oh, okay.
Pardon. My name is Ngaba Nabea. I, along with Beck and Amaka, was a part of the conservatory last year, and this would have been my first season. I think the biggest part for me was understudying Amaka as Hamlet. That was a pretty big deal, and I'm feeling. I'll kind of talk more about that later, but I'm feeling very hopeful being here today with just a pinch of anxiety, if only because there has always been inherent risk in discussing these topics in a professional setting for us. We usually, these kinds of conversations are reserved for the bar after a show or rehearsal day, where we just vent out loud and hope none of it reaches back, because we don't want to be perceived as being difficult to work with or unprofessional, especially in an industry as uncertain as acting can be, where your reputation carries a lot of weight. And if people misinterpret your passion for justice as being difficult to work with, then it stifles a lot of our voices. It makes us kind of almost weirdly complicit in our own dehumanization. At least I can't speak for anyone else here, but at least for me, that's how it sometimes feels.
You can speak for me anytime, my friend.
Blessed. Yeah, but I'm feeling hopeful because we've been given this space and we've been given this opportunity, especially from an institution as high up as Stratford. It's yeah, don't we're gonna lay into them, but it's, I just want to come out and say right from the get-go that I appreciate this opportunity to bring about some real tangible change. And I'm so happy to be here with so many beautiful, colorful people, and I'm excited to see where this goes.
Thank you so much, Ngabo. I hear you when you talk about feeling complicit. You know, I've been asked this week, why didn't you say something? Why didn't you tell me? You know? And that's not always possible when we're doing table work. But I know you are brilliant. I know you are bold. And today you are brave. So thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Let's get to know the rest of you.
I can go next. Hi, everyone. I'm Andre Sills, and this year would have been my sixth season where I would have played Henry VIII in Wolf Hall, the Ghost in Hamlet, and Don Pedro in Much Ado About Nothing. Now, my journey with the festivals, because over the past couple of years, I've been bouncing back and forth between the Stratford Festival and the Shaw Festival, and my journey with both has been interesting. I think back to my years in theater school, where I was the token Black guy in my class, which was an interesting journey. And, you know, going through class, doing acting exercises and having a classmate of mine thinking using the N-word in an acting exercise would be an interesting experiment. Anyways, moving on from that. But then also taking note as I'm approaching my final year, setting my goals in what I want to do across the country is, you know, play leads on the Stratford stage, play leads on the Shaw Festival stage, be a lead in a TV series and all these sorts of things, right? And in my final year, I had a few things happen. I posted this last night as something that Andrew Moody wrote in 2003, which was the beginning of my final year at theater school. Asking a question, would he ever be able to take the stage as a leading man? And then, like, that was a seed that was planted in my mind. And then later on that year, we went to go see a show at the Shaw Festival. And, you know, as I said, making those goals in my head of what I want to do, but then also stepping into the lobby and seeing the artistic company that was present at the time. There was nothing that represented this. So the big question became, can I work there? Can I do what I've been? Can I make my goals happen? And I had a great privilege of getting into the Stratford Festival through the conservatory in 2005, where I started off doing the conservatory and then did 4 consecutive years. So I had the last 2 years of Richard Manette and then the first 2 years of Des McAnuff. But during that time, the one thing I did a lot of was watched and listened, while also trying to achieve my goals of being a leading man on these stages. I loved those stages there. But still trying to navigate being seen. So after the 4 years, I was offered a 5th to be scenery again. And I said no. And I walked away with vengeance on my mind of coming back with getting to a place where I could not be ignored. And, you know, I went back to Toronto. I did theater across the country and was able, after maybe 5 years after the fact of working hard in the city, to be able to get a small opportunity to do something at the Shaw Festival. And surprisingly enough, the place that championed me, I think, to arrive back at Stratford was the Shaw Festival, giving me an opportunity to play Sam in Master Harold and the Boys, which me and Alan did together. And then the year after that, an Octoroon, both plays dealing with race. One play written by a white man, another one written by a black man, both trying to do the exact same thing in two different ways, of telling people or showing people that people of our color are actually human beings. And it's been a great I'm grateful for the opportunities to be a leading man on these stages, but I've also tracked carefully how we got here. I haven't forgotten it. And the one thing I say to young folks coming up right now who think that this is just the norm, this isn't the norm. I still think we're in our testing phase of figuring out how we do this. But taking up the challenge of what's been passed on to us and fighting our way through to make our voices heard and our faces seen and our entire beings being respected as human beings. That's all I have to say for now.
Thanks so much, Andre. Feeling like an experiment, that phrase really that resonates with me. And I saw some nods, your story from theater school, and it reminds me, you know, what Evie said, which is a conversation we've been having so much about feeling like a product.
Mm-hmm.
You know, thank you, Andre. David?
Yes. Yeah. Hello, everyone. I'm David Collins. I've been here at the festival for the last 12 years. But my relationship with the festival really started in the 80s. I did my first auditions for this place in the 80s, early 80s. Didn't get in. I auditioned for every artistic director from 1983 up until I got in 2008. And there was no room. The door would not open. But I'm sitting now, today, with this group of people because we're in the middle of a revolution. The world is I've been able to witness a transformation throughout the length of my career. I started in the 70s, and the opportunities that were available in the 70s were, to say the least, very limited. I played criminals, I played convicts, I played servants, because that's all that was available to me. And I have watched this transformation happen. I've witnessed this transformation happen over the last almost years. And I can't tell you how thrilled I am to be able to sit here today with this group of artists in this place. Certainly, the catalyst for all of this is what's been happening in the States over the last week. But it's the climax of what's been happening on the North American continent for the last 400 years, because it isn't just that incident that lit the spark, let's say. And we here in Canada like to think that that this doesn't affect us, but it's because we don't know our own history. because like the United States, this country also started with genocide. Like the United States, this country also had slavery. But the reason slavery didn't work here is because of the climate. It was not economically viable to keep slaves in over the harsh winters that we have here. And this is the only reason it wasn't able to take off. But it's still affected the culture. It still resonates with white supremacy, and the society is still grappling with its own self. Black people, Indigenous people, Asian people are still struggling to find their place. And I feel so privileged and honored that I have been permitted to have a place here. It didn't come to me easily, and it, as someone said earlier, it still is an experiment, but at least the experiment is happening. At least we are given a voice here, which is something that wasn't even possible. I remember when I first came to Toronto in the early 80s, artistic director of major theater in Toronto was asked if he would ever consider casting a Black Juliet. And he looked at the reporter and he said, not even if she was exceptional. And that's where the bar was set in the 80s. And now I was here when a Black Juliet was on the main stage here. I've also witnessed a Black Lady Macbeth, Cleopatra. Things are changing. Things are opening. Otherwise, these young people wouldn't be here because they wouldn't see any opportunity. I was a fool. I was a maniac. I wanted to do theater. I found the theater when I was in high school because it was where the other was. I was never part of the greater population, but the room where I felt my voice was at least listened to was in a room full of theater students. So I chose to make this my profession because I saw it as a way to change the world. And I am thrilled because I'm seeing the fruits of my labor and everybody else's labor that is sitting here come to fruition, having this conversation alone. Because 10, 12 years ago, this wouldn't even have been a possibility. But it's only through the perseverance, the dedication to their art and to their craft that these people have been able to assemble here today. And I want to thank the festival for this opportunity because I know they're taking flack for what happened, for the letter of support that they wrote earlier in the week for Black Lives Matter. Not only taking flack via the letters from people that don't agree with them, but also taking a financial bite. But welcome to the struggle, because that's what it is. When you stand up and you make some noise, you are going to get pushback. But I credit the festival for doing more than paying lip service to the Black artists that you see assembled here, getting roles and being given opportunities, and taking a leadership role in how theater should be produced in this country. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. Kimberly.
Thanks, David. For those who don't know, yesterday on CBC, Anthony did say he has received letters of complaint after that Instagram post on the festival, on the festival's Instagram. So just to reference what David was talking about there, Anthony has received letters stating that people are not happy with that display of allyship.
And not coming back as well.
And not coming back. Yeah.
Bye.
Yeah.
Robert and Kimberly, we still have to meet you.
I'll go next if you don't mind.
Absolutely.
My name is Robert Ball. This would have been my first season here at the Stratford Festival. I did the workshop for Here's What It Takes in November. And I was set to play the lead as Brent, one of the leads, pardon me, in Here's What It Takes, the brand new musical that the festival was putting on, and ensemble in Chicago. You have to bear with me. I'm raw with all of the emotions. I'm fighting the urge to crack a joke about my lighting cutting in and out. And why I'm fighting that urge is because what I realize is that there's a mechanism in me that has developed to crack a joke, to break down the tippy-toeing around and to make people feel more comfortable about my presence in a room. And I think part of it is definitely my nature, but then part of it is also just, let's just get this out of the way. Let me crack a joke so everybody's guards are down so you can feel safe and comfortable. I'm so humbled and honored to be amongst these beautiful and brilliant and talented people that I had before this only had a short time to get to know, and over this have really had an opportunity to get to know quite well. And also humbled and honored to have a voice on this platform and any platform, because so many people do not and will never. And so I'm humbled and grateful and honored for that. And thank you, Stratford Festival, for allowing this, and this committee for and community for bringing this all together. I am proud and honored to be the reflection of the Black experience in diaspora in Canada. My great-great-great-grandfather came to the Underground Railroad to Canada. One of my other ancestors, for 7 generations back, received his freedom papers and migrated north to Canada. I heard these stories growing up, being told that they did this so I would have the right to read, have education. In their minds, that was their only thought. And here I am, my ancestors' wildest dreams. And they settled not far from here in London, Chatham, Windsor. So for me, walking to the festival theater every day, for me now being here, resonates very deeply, because I am my ancestors' wildest dreams. Could they have imagined that 6 and 7 generations later, I'd be walking to work just an hour away from where they fought and travailed to be on a stage as a Black gay man, as a principal character in a brand new musical in one of the largest stages in North America? I said I'm part of the reflection of the diaspora. My mother moved to Canada in '73 from Jamaica, as she said, for opportunities and adventure. And I also, like Alan, coming from a Caribbean background, and just as Black folks, the arts is, though it's expected of us, it's a challenge because we know the instability in it, we know the history of it, and as immigrants, we come to this country for different opportunities, for more opportunities, and education is a really high on the list. And so the expectation is to be a teacher, a doctor, a lawyer, what have you. And so I did have to struggle a little bit to pursue this as a career, but I am still also her wildest dreams as well. And so I feel honored again, like I said, to have this space to share with you all today. And I will leave it at that.
Thanks so much, Robert. I think it's so interesting that you talk about your walk to work, because our walk to work and our walk to the grocery store and our experience in the Stratford grocery stores is something that I want to talk about later. Kimberly.
Hi, everybody. Hello back, family, everyone out there. My name is Kimberly Ramprasad. I spent 1 season at the Stratford Festival as an actor. I also happen to be a director and a choreographer, and I am currently the Associate Artistic Director at the Shaw Festival here in Niagara-on-the-Lake, where I'm currently isolating in this little place. I feel summoned. I feel humbled that it's young people in particular. I mean, this is a beautiful group of people, young people who have asked me to join them in this because my heart breaks for them, and they're also so resilient. I have the pleasure in my position as a leader in our community to assist them in navigating this space. They are so brave. They are so smart. They are so elegant. They're tenacious. They're excellent. They're loving. They're kind. And I have to tell them how to play the game. And I think if I have to continue this, this is an opportunity for other people to understand the game that they are playing and how we're playing it, if they would like to listen. I love what I do. I love being on stage. I love creating, but being a leader in this space is where my art meets my advocacy. And I will always leave creation for a moment to make more space and guarantee more space for all of the people who are excellent, who cannot get in simply because other people refuse to acknowledge their excellence. I'm not here for that. I am here for my people because they're beautiful. That's me.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Holy smokes. I want to jump in. We have to jump in. This is feeling so urgent, and 90 minutes is so short. I'm feeling that now. So I heard the mechanisms that have been built in me from Robert. I heard feeling like an experiment. I heard navigating Blackness. Is it taught from Alan? And just from Kimberly, how to play the game. There are costs to surviving in this institution. And I want to be really clear about what those are. Because of the time limit, we don't all get to answer all questions, but I want to know what have been the costs of working for the festival as a Black artist, as a Black staff member. I want to talk about those, and then I want to talk about solutions, but I want to be clear about what those costs are.
For me, a big thing, and it's not just with this institution, but it is with, I think, since theater school, imposter syndrome. It's this idea that I didn't earn my spot. We kind of touched on this in a previous conversation, but it feels like I'm filling out a quota sometimes, like I don't have any right to be here. I think it was our second day of rehearsals for Much Ado About Nothing. On our first 15-minute break, I had a nervous breakdown in the bathroom. I didn't tell anybody about it. I made sure that I was very discreet, but it felt like I had no business being in that room. This has been a feeling that has followed me since theater school, where if you kind of looked at my graduating class, you had one Black man, one Black woman, one Filipino man, one Filipino woman, one Jewish man, one Jewish woman, one Middle Eastern man, one Middle Eastern woman, and then the rest of them were white. And you couldn't help, I couldn't help but look at that and be like, oh, did I earn this? Am I actually here because I'm good at what I do, or is it just because I'm Black? And unfortunately, it has had a very bad effect on my mental health in terms of I think my first couple months here feeling like a complete fraud really kind of messed me up. But yeah, funnily enough, all the spare time we've had for with all the COVID stuff happening and everything, just being by myself and isolating has caused me to reflect and really try and come out the other end from that. So I'm feeling much better about it, but I won't really know until I'm in my next gig. But that for me is how my experience as a Black actor, not just here in this institution, but all over Canada sometimes.
I think that's a reflection. And I want to first acknowledge that everybody here was nodding their heads, and everybody on the screen was nodding their heads. Mm-hmm. But I think that also goes with society's projection of Black men and Black women. Society's projection that Black men are all threatening, dangerous, quote unquote thugs. It's an insecurity that we all carry within us, but we don't acknowledge for ourselves where we are. You were in your graduating class. You graduated. You were excellent. Mm-hmm. You were in the bathroom at the rehearsal hall, but you were in the bathroom at the rehearsal hall of the Stratford Festival. You are here. You are excellent. I said this last night, and I'll say it again, over and over and over again. We are the survivors of the Middle Passage. Mm-hmm. Our ancestors survived the Middle Passage, where an enormous amount of these people did not survive. Through illness, sickness, disease, lying in their own feces, squeezed up against other people lying in their own feces. And they got to this place, were beaten, were hung, were raped, and they're here. And we are here. And nothing anybody ever does or says to me on the street or in the rehearsal hall can come anywhere close to what our ancestors survived to be here. So with that blood flowing through our veins, that is what we have to check in on. Those beautiful, what Kimberly said about smart, intelligent, elegant, tenacious. All of those words apply to everybody sitting here because we were born with it.
I agree with you, David. And you and I have shared dressing rooms for years. And we've had this conversation a lot. I hope everyone on this feed realizes that while this is the first time that we as a company of Black artists have been able to utilize a platform like this to speak directly to you, these conversations happen every single day. And I'd like to go ahead.
Just to jump in with Ibi and Gabo, I want you guys to know one of the reasons why I'm here. I'm one of the only people from the backstage on our panel today. I saw you. I see you. I bear witness. I see you run to the bathroom and have a breakdown. I see you look yourself in the mirror and tell yourself 30 seconds before you go on, I got this. I deserve this because I'm good, not because I'm Black. I saw that. And I want you guys to know that that did not go unnoticed. The crew is watching, the crew is witness, and the crew is here.
Thank you, Erica. And we see you too. I mean, I've had conversations with white crew members at this place who seek me out on a regular basis to say, please help me understand. I mean, we can get into allyship in a minute, Beck, but I wanted to touch on something that David was saying. Yes, we are the descendants of the Middle Passage. We're the descendants of slaves. My father left Louisiana when he was about 12 years old to come north, but he grew up in a shack on a cotton field, basically. So we're not far away from that legacy. I do want to acknowledge, though, that while we are full of resilience and while we are full of tenacity and strength, we don't always succeed. A few years ago, we lost a brother at Shaw because this industry is hard, because we feel unseen. I've been close myself. I don't talk about that because there is something about speaking about one's mental illness that is akin to acknowledging weakness, and weakness in this industry means you don't have a place because you have to have a crocodile hide to be in this industry. That's something that needs to change across the board for all of us. We need support in these rooms. Speaking of solutions. But I want to acknowledge that while we are tough and while we are still here, we're not okay. I'm not okay with being tough every day. I don't want to be. Sometimes I'd like a hug and I can't ask for one because I got to stand up and take it. I've been told by Shakespeare professors in my education and later on, when I've wanted to do a Brutus monologue from Julius Caesar, that's the wrong piece for me. I should have an Othello or an Aaron or a Caliban. We are put into compartments by this industry, by the people that teach us, that are supposed to be our mentors and leaders. And those things are very difficult to reckon with. So acknowledging that we're not okay, that tenacity is hard earned. And I think for all Black people, we can acknowledge that tenacity shortens your lifespan. Incidents of heart disease, high blood pressure, stroke. These are all the results of stress. And Black folks have stress. So what are the costs of working here? Managing that stress every day. You know, to come back to you, Erica, the crew is on our side, and I acknowledge that. And I know they're trying. But every time a crew member asks me to explain something to them, that is emotional labor that I have to go through. I have to traumatize myself to educate them. And I need them to know what that costs. I need them to know that every time I'm asked by one of these friends of mine, what's happening in the States? Can you tell me why people are rioting? Can you believe what happened to Michael Brown? I have to go to my therapist that week and go, I'm struggling because I have to talk about this with people that don't understand, that don't have the target on their back every day. Walking into stores around Stratford and seeing Confederate flags for sale costs a lot. Seeing pickup trucks drive by my house with Confederate flags flying off the back. We're in Canada. This is not the American South. And by the way, they lost. I don't know if y'all heard. But that costs a lot. I was banned from a Facebook group of Stratford residents because I pointed out that a store in town was selling Confederate flags. I don't understand. So that is my assessment of the cost.
I think we've stumbled on something. It's sort of, I don't know how this is unexpected to me. You know, I asked this question and I was thinking about, I played a part I didn't believe in. I said something I didn't mean. I laughed at a joke I thought was offensive. You know, these are the costs that go through my mind, but I'm hearing health and mental health. And I want to underline that. That's big. Thank you so much, Erica and Gabo, David, Ibi. I think some people that are listening, watching, don't know the definition of structural racism. And I want to ask a question about structural racism. So before I ask that question, for those who do not know, structural racism is a shorthand term for the many systemic factors. So we're talking public policies, institutional practices, we're talking cultural representations and other norms that work to produce and maintain racial inequities. So structural racism, you know, it's everywhere. It's around, underneath, across. It's reinforcing ways to perpetuate racial group inequity. I want to zoom in on the festival, if we can, and I want to talk about what can be done structurally moving forward to address and potentially mend the costs that we've discussed here.
Before we do that, I just quickly want to mention something that's on my heart, and this won't take long, but you know, entering the festival, a lot of Canadian theater companies kind of create this environment where, you know, you're told that you're really well spoken and you're so articulate and you have this amazing control of the language. It's like this language this is the only language I've known. You know, like this was, you know, beaten into my ancestors' bodies, and the reason I have a command is because I have no other choice. And to see that as, like, you know, a marker of success or of intelligence, where it's not as treasured to speak any other languages. You know, I get that we're, you know, primarily English speaking country, but you know, I just think that because of that, I feel like I end up having to erase part of myself, you know, only bring the part that's really good at English and doesn't cut off G's and, you know, doesn't use any, you know, slang or whatever, because I don't want to make people uncomfortable and go like, what are you talking about? Feels like I'm living a double life.
Until you're asked to write the rap for the show.
Yeah, that part. So yeah, I don't know. I do not know structurally what can be done moving forward. I'm sure.
Can I talk to that for a second, Amaka?
Yeah.
I just got a text message from a friend, another person of color who was here in previous years, who I know has also struggled. The festival commented that we have a full-time company manager who is available to connect artists to mental health professionals whenever needed. I would like to say that as an artist of color here, I am not comfortable going to a company manager and saying I'm having trouble doing my work because I'm suicidal or I'm depressed. I'm not comfortable with it. First of all, it should never have gotten to that point, because the things that took me to that point should have been addressed in the room long before I ever reached that point. But second of all, speaking to a representative of a body that you don't completely trust to have your best interests at heart, that you know is steeped in white supremacy, and telling them that you are weak is the last thing a Black artist wants to do. So I'd like to respond to the festival by saying that. Understand that we know you're trying, but it's not the solution we need. Thanks.
And I think also today is about, what are we going to do? Mm-hmm. Not, this was available the whole time, or I said this, didn't I? Or I never felt that way. Wasn't that a misinterpretation? I want to look forward. I want to ask, okay, we're not comfortable. You're saying that there isn't comfort there to say, I'm struggling because I'm Black and you make it harder for me. How does that trust get built?
It doesn't. Like I can speak for the past 20 years. When I first came to Stratford to do hair and makeup, I was the only Black female of the staff of 500 people. I walked in here from a multicultural society called Scarborough, Ontario, down the way, to a completely white sea of faces looking at me with zero understanding of what they expected from me. My very first day, my boss said to me, I don't usually hire single mothers, but I thought it was good to give you a chance. And that was at a time where there was no union protection for me. I could just be not renewed. My contract could have been dropped at any moment. So when I first came, I was told, you come here, you be good, you'll get to stay. And by the way, don't mention your children. You're not allowed to have those. So, and here I am 20 years later, and I'm still in the same position of unsafety and constant sharing to falling on deaf ears.
Something as simple as, like, you know, when it comes to the backstage presence, you know, how can we make sure that there are technicians with proper makeup, with adequate makeup, with tools and skills to deal with natural hair if the case arises, with the wherewithal to light like different shades of black skin, of the skin of other ethnicities, whoever may happen to be on the stage, and there's something too, I don't know if this is a structural thing or if it's personal, but like the way I feel comfortable in this Zoom room to be able to speak my mind, something in the consciousness of the leadership that exists in the creative process has to foster that. I think there has to be an awareness. Yeah, Kimberly.
Kimberly, yeah.
I was just going to say, the way that you feel in this Zoom room is the way you're supposed to feel in the rehearsal hall, because that's how you do your work. This, how you feel right now, is exactly how you're supposed to feel in the rehearsal hall. Free to take risks, to be honest, to be vulnerable, to speak to a weakness and to not let it be some sort of rolling liability. And that's what we're talking about in these spaces. I use these spaces, these big spaces that we're trying to be in. We're invited into them and then they are not safe. So therefore we can't do the work. We're set up not for success if we cannot actually be our authentic selves, which means a level of safety, so that we can be dangerous in our work. If it is dangerous to work, then we can't do our work and we're only skimming the surface.
And industry, before you feel empowered to pick on the festival for all of this.
No, I'm saying institutions, we're going to go for a second. We know where we are.
That's right. This industry needs to understand that Black artists aren't just to be encouraged to be on stage, because that's all I ever got, right? I decided to pick up a hammer when I was in university, and that was encouraged once I did it. But there was no recruitment from the tech side to say, we want artists of color, because they don't understand what it is to be standing backstage with a man on run crew. This happened to me, who hands you loaded firearms, granted loaded with blanks, but you don't check the barrel all the time. You don't have time. A man is handing you a loaded firearm or handing it to somebody who's going to point it at you, who has also given you a piece of racist literature, thinking it was funny. This happened to me backstage at the Tom Patterson Theater, the old Tom Patterson Theater. So I don't know how to feel about that. This man, my life is in his hands, literally, in public.
I think in terms of like how that can be addressed is that the festival and other arts institutions have to demand of the crew a certain level of excellence. The crew gives the festivals and the employers what they need, what they ask for, nothing more. So it has to start with the cultural institutions demanding that their tradespeople backstage have experience lighting black skin, have experience makeuping black skin, doing black hair, all the things that I'm expected to do as a black hairstylist to white people. I don't get the privilege of saying I don't do white people. I'd be fired. But I've heard people say that I don't do black hair. And it's allowed over and over.
Robert, you had your hand up twice there, Robert.
Yeah, that's actually, Erica hit on exactly what I want to say. And to your initial question is that it's the institution of it. Lighting, just the foundation of lighting as we know it was built on the idea that we don't exist. The only reason that they started to introduce how to light in terms of photography, people of color, was because they were doing magazines and print, and furniture owners were upset that their wooden furniture was not being photographed to its best ability. So they then had to go and figure out how to light darker hues. So the foundation, that's where these things lie. The foundation of it didn't consider us. And so now that we're in a new age, we're in a 21st century. Is that what century we're in?
Oh no, man.
I'm in my first century. So.
Right. Now that we're in this new age and they're thinking about that, it should be required. It should be required as your foundation that you have that knowledge. And to Erica's point, it should be in the foundation that you can do hair and makeup for all people. I was a model for years and had long hair, and I just expected that I would always have to do my own hair and do my own makeup. And that's not okay.
Absolutely. And just jumping off that, to both of your points, that this is a thing that goes back as far as people in theater school. 4 years of going there and not once, like all the shows I did, not once did I ever have makeup done or hair done, except maybe like my final performance in fourth year. But like by then I was already used to having to like fend for myself in terms of like trying to figure out how to make myself look as good as I can for the stage. And so just to Erica's point, this is rooted as far back for some people as theater school, and it needs to start being taught to everybody.
Well, I'm finding it a bit of a chess match, like with all these sort of things being talked about, like the rehearsal hall, you have to be present. But for me, I feel like, yes, I have to be present, but also be 3 steps ahead of what I may face. You know, so that extra energy that's being taken up to be present in a room, I have to be ahead of you. 3-4 steps ahead of you to prepare for what you're going to say to me, how you're going to ignore certain themes in a play, and and then have certain words keep coming up, and like feeling like, is anybody else hearing the word that's being repeated over and over again? That is problematic. So how, like, trying to figure out how to speak the words, and, you know, as I take this thing off of my head, this is not a gang thing. It's a do-rag. I wear my hair to make myself look nice. So there you are, Mom, that's off my head. But you know, the one thing we want to be able to do is to be present. And I want to take on these plays in their fullness, and being able to take them on. I don't want to ignore what is really under the surface. We've been doing that for a while. And, you know, you hire us now to be on your stages. And like, for me, I feel like if I can't do something, I won't do it. That, I mean, as a play, if there's something in a play that I can't do, I think I won't do the play. But I want to be able to step into something that I can take on fully and have those hard conversations in the room of what it is like to be in the skin that I am in, as opposed to, oh, it's colorblind. So we don't actually have to take on the issues at hand of the world that we're in, because as everybody can see now, the world is not colorblind.
Also, I think it's the way history's taught. Black people have been written out of European history, when in fact there have been Black people in Europe as long as there's been a Europe. That is certainly the history I was taught in school, and I'm sure I know that it's still taught now. And it's trying to figure out how to navigate yourself into the world of the 1400s, of the 1600s, of the 1700s. And we have to do the work and know that there were people of color in Europe forever. And I don't think it's so much up to us. I think it's up to the directors.
It's also how you frame that history, because
exactly.
Black history has history in Europe.
Yes.
People are saying European history. What they want to try and say is white history. These are things. If you want to talk about European history, then talk about European history, but don't give me one lens. And that's the work, again, that you're all talking about, that we have to do on the back end, and then see if there's a window to give to the room so that we can just arrive.
Amen.
My point being,
it's also about agency. If we don't have agency to determine what we are representing on stage, we have nothing. Right? I mean, you want some solutions? There's a couple. For classical theaters out there, anybody that wants to produce classical work, you need to broaden your definition of what the hell classical is.
That part.
Because classical cannot mean north of the southern tip of Italy, south of Scotland, west of the Ural Mountains, and east of the Atlantic Ocean, because that's what it is right now. Every classical theater I know of that I've ever worked for is talking about Greek classics, is talking about Shakespeare, is talking about Moliere. That's where we stay on that continent. Sometimes they bend the box a little and do some North American classics, but 99% of them are white.
And that's
in 10
what
years in Stratford, we haven't produced a single work on the main stages here until last year that was written by a playwright of color.
Mm-hmm. Actually, this year we had
until last year, I said. We had Birds of a Kind last year.
Right.
There's also this thing, it's an old term, but I feel it applies as I look around the festival and I see this beautiful company, just a beautiful company of actors, the people that work there, and there's a kindness, but I cannot help but feel as I look around, even in this room, that old idea of the brown bag test. And the brown bag test was done. If you were darker than the bag, you would not work. And as I look at the history of the people that have worked in this theater, I see people that are at least 4 shades lighter than me. And I ask, why is that? And is that brown bag test in place? And I just don't know it, because I think, well, that's old, that's not, it doesn't exist. But as I look around the theater, when I saw Ngabo, it was like, yes, there it is.
I felt the exact
there
same way.
There it is. And I felt a kinship. And it's not, the slaves were taught to hate each other for that reason.
Mm-hmm.
They were taught that the different hues of color was something to hate about themselves, something to hate about each other. But I cannot help but feel, as I look around the theater, is there a brown bag test?
Maybe not explicitly, but it's in everybody's mind.
Absolutely.
Yes, there is.
You look around this Zoom room, there is a conversation about shadeism to be had. This is not a fluke, my friends.
Again,
Well, just look at the makeup.
Shadism, like white, is a concept that is being laid on you. I remember auditioning for a television show once, and I went in, I did my bit, and the director said to me, David, yeah, you're good, and you're good at this part, but you're not very black. And I said to him, I'm black enough to be called nigger when I walk down the street.
Hey.
Does that work for you?
I had the same thing happen at a black theater I worked for. I did King Edward II back in Cleveland.
Yeah, and that's how toxic that is.
Yeah, the director said to me, "I don't think you're street enough."
Yeah,
and then I did the audition.
Be educated.
Oh, okay, you got the part.
You're right.
Yeah, and I know we probably have questions that Beck's prepared, and thank you for moderating that we want to get to. But this is the part of the conversation that we need to be having. And thank you all for watching, and hopefully your comments that we can respond to later. And hopefully, again, this is ongoing. But I often say that what we've been saying in our conversations is they don't know what they don't know. And something I've been saying for a long time is it's not ours. And we're talking about some of those institutionalized things like Alan was talking about in shadism, things that were imposed through colonization, not only on us, but y'all watching and everybody, these things that are not ours. And so how do we unpack them that we don't have to hate each other in terms of the complexion of our skin within our communities? We're taught, I was called whitewashed, I don't sound black, I don't act black, and that was on both sides, from white people and black people. So how do we start to unpack those things, that toxicity? And that's important to the structures as well, specifically not just the Stratford Theatre, but how do we unpack those things culturally and systemically so that we can, as Kimberly was saying, come to the space and do the work and be free.
Well, first we have to come to terms with it as individuals. That's what we have to do before we can take it out into the broader society.
Questioning your own biases. on an ongoing basis, just questioning it. So sometimes we don't even realize it's unconscious what we've learned, and the work has to be done to unlearn it.
And it's unconscious for white folks too, and for white institutions.
Yeah.
They don't know they're doing this. They think they're helping with their ED&I sessions.
I know they do, because I'm in the rooms when I hear those conversations. You guys don't realize that when I say I'm a witness, I'm a witness.
Mhm.
I'm so white that sometimes people forget I'm still in the room when you all leave the dressing rooms or the fitting rooms, and the whole conversation happens behind your back that you don't know about. And I'm standing there watching this stuff, listening to this stuff, completely invisible. And when I report to people that what was said in those rooms was horrible, racist, unacceptable, I am blamed. I am the problem. Why are you making this about race, Erica? Why are you making this a problem? You're intimidating, aren't you? You're angry. I'm like, no, I'm just trying to tell you what you don't know. You don't know, you don't know. We're trying to tell you, but listen.
Yeah. And to be clear, I don't think that ED&I training is a bad thing at all. But congratulating yourself for having done it and thinking that you've finished is a problem. That I see organizations fall into that trap all the time.
I think we're experiencing now what North America went through when Roots came out in the 70s. Everybody looked around and said, "Oh my God, I had no idea." But that awakening has faded away within a couple of years, and we're watching the whole world right now react to what happened to George Floyd. What was it the other day? There was a report, all 50 states, there's protests happening, and 18, 20 countries around the world. And it's just getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. Mm-hmm. My hope, my prayer is that this energy that's been generated will be the catalyst to keep things going forward, because it can't just get wrapped up in another couple of news cycles. When Mr. Trump does a couple of more ridiculous, outrageous things, and then we'll forget about it. It's like news of COVID all of a sudden got real quiet. It was above the banner, and now, due to the protests, it's taking second and third page. I just hope that that's not what happens to what's going on now. I hope that's what being generated is a catalyst for real change. Mm-hmm. We're seeing so many people making the gesture. God, the NFL acknowledged that they were wrong to criticize athletes taking a knee, finally realizing that it wasn't about the flag. This is something.
Yeah.
Mr. Trudeau, the other day, took a knee in Ottawa at a protest. That's something. Also sticking his thumb into Mr. Trump's face, but we'll see how that flies out.
Yeah, Kimberly.
But these are all wonderful gestures, but we're waiting to see what real action can be taken to move things forward.
Right.
Kimberly, you've had your hand up for a bit there.
Yes, I just wanted to go back to speaking about the unpacking of this work that we have to do. And the thing is, I wouldn't want to encourage us to do it in isolation, because we're unpacking stuff that's been pushed down because of a whole system. So everyone has to help us do the unpacking. So if we're going back to our art then, and we're talking about the unpacking of all of these different things, they have to be done in a space in which there is space given for that, and that we're allowed to do it, which means there needs to be leadership in rooms that look like us in order for the unpacking to happen.
That's right.
Yeah,
because it's not just us who has to unpack it. Yes, we bear the load of it because it is in us, literally in our vessels, in which we need to prepare the containers for the art. But everybody needs to be there because we have to exist in a world with everyone. So how do we do this unpacking in our workspace in order to make the best work? And that means that it needs to be done in a space that has reflection of us in decision-making positions.
Right.
Yes, seeing us in decision-making positions. I want to talk more about theater-specific institutional changes. I think this festival is going to have to ask themselves, what what staff they have, what financial resources, what resources in general that they can devote to this initiative that may take a long time, and it may not produce tangible outcomes right away. But like we said, there is momentum now. There is an audience now. There is action now. I want to talk about what we think those theater-specific institutional changes can be. Yes, Evie.
So I just want to do a quick time check. I know we have so much to say. We're at 10 minutes, so maybe
we've been given permission to extend, Robert.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah.
I am on it, you guys. You don't worry about time. Everyone at home, you don't worry. You just sit back. When the screen turns off, it's over.
Thank you.
I have two points to make on the institutional structure side. I've been serving on the board of a regional theater for a couple of years now, the Grand Theatre in London, and it's been quite an education in terms of how governance structures in some ways reinforce these detrimental practices. But one of them in particular is that there is a gaslighting that happens, or at least the perception of one, which is almost as dangerous, when Black artists are brought into a room to talk about their experience with a predominantly white group questioning them. Because the problem is, if you do not have agency in the decision-making processes of the organization, you give your experience, you state your case, then you walk out of the room, and then white folks determine what to do about it, right? And again, like Kimberly said, if we're not in a space where we feel we have representation at the highest levels, I don't know how to trust that my input is being digested properly, right? Or that the solutions that are going to be presented actually help. So there are two things that theaters need to look at. One is board composition. And that is because when an artistic director pitches a season to a board, when they talk about the direction of their leadership, where they want to take an organization, particularly a white artistic director, when they're talking about issues of diversity, the board has the final say. Every arts leader in the country who you see in the director's offices is an employee of the board they serve. In terms of a governance structure, we have to remember that. So when we look at Anthony Cimolino, he is the face of our festival, but the buck doesn't completely stop with him. He answers to a governing body. Number two, we have to look at our fundraising models very carefully, because theaters, especially larger theaters, the larger you are, the more problematic this gets. Big theaters go after major money. And the Stratford Festival has been really good at it. They're really good at it. I watched this festival basically raise $100 million in 3 years, which is an extraordinary task. So kudos to the festival to build the Patterson Theater. It's an enormous capital campaign by anybody's standards. Problem is that when people give you that size of donation, they're going to want your organization to reflect them, right? So if your donor base is 99% white, that's what you're going to reflect with your programming. That's what you're going to give back to that community, because you are in some ways beholden to them, right? We need to figure out how to engage with communities to support us in our work that are non-white. POC communities across Canada, across the States. And look, there's money there, but they ain't giving it to Stratford, because what are we selling that they want to buy? So if we want to reach into these communities, we need people, industry, listen up. We need people at all levels of theater production. And I'm not just talking about designers, directors, technicians. I'm talking about fundraising professionals. I'm talking about professionals who want to be engaged at the board level of organizations like this. I'm talking about Black folks, brown folks, Asian folks who want to get in on the patronage side of the arts, because we can speak for you and we can have a huge impact. But unless you let us know that your money speaks, we can't sell it to our employers as actors or as technicians, right? It's a fundamental part of how we get our work done. So in a way, we're fighting an uphill battle just because our agency is only as good right now as the volume of our platform, right? The Stratford Festival has given us this platform, which is an incredible gesture, but we cannot allow, from a structural point of view, this platform to go away in 36 more hours.
Right.
And just
Well, another important thing to note too is, like, it's not just enough to program Black play and Asian play and say, where's the audience? one thing I think that's what I've seen in the past of where's the audience, but then I could say, where is the outreach? Because if you've been marketing your programming a certain way to a certain audience, where another demographic has basically been ignored, then you're going to need some outreach to let them know, hey, we're creating something for you. There is an opportunity for us to connect, to learn from each other, and to develop. And I think that's an important thing to remember. It's not just enough to program a thing. You also need the outreach to let people know that their stories are also being heard, and also have some direct contact with that community so that we know that it's being done right.
Mm-hmm. And just to jump off. Oh.
Robert, you had your hand up, and then Ngabo, why don't you follow Robert?
Sure.
Yeah, that outreach piece and marketing and promotion is so important. Like I said, I'm new to the festival, so I don't know those inner workings, but I was cast in Five Guys Named Mo, I guess it was last year or the year before, and those of us in the industry in Canada know that got canceled 3 days before I was to leave to start rehearsals. Heartbreaking. For those of you who don't know Five Guys Named Mo, it is a show about five guys named Mo, all Black men, and it was to be done at Neptune Theatre in Halifax. And there are many of us who feel like that outreach and marketing was a big piece of that. Because they just weren't getting the response in terms of ticket sales, and they didn't know how to proceed with it because they just didn't have the money and the funds. But looking at your models previously, them and the entire industry, who are you marketing to? Who is your audience? A Black show doesn't have to have a Black audience. And if it does, yes, but then still, if you don't market and outreach to Black communities and diverse communities, then you're not going to get them anyway. So, yeah.
They said not set up for success that way, because they're saying that they can't market and outreach us. I was like, there's no bridge to us. You didn't even build a bridge in the first place. Like, that is a huge commitment. And it's so challenging when the shows end up getting programmed and then they may not get the reach that they're looking for because maybe their audiences aren't ready and they're counting on their quote diverse audience to come. Why would we come?
And we know you've been trying, but I hear things that disturb me all the time. I'm going to put you on blast, Anthony. We had a meeting once where you said to me very earnestly, and I know you meant the best by it, but you said our audiences just aren't diversifying as quickly as we'd like them to. And I apologize if my jaw hit the floor in that moment, because again, we haven't really been doing the work. It's not just about putting more of us on stage or even programming titles that were by us. It's about actually engaging with those communities.
Ngabo, you've been waiting to speak there.
Oh, that's totally fine. I literally, just to go off that, and in terms of seeing more Black, well, contribute. I don't even know what I'm saying anymore. Just in terms of seeing Black bodies on stage and trying to accumulate that, I'd like to see the institutions commit to their ideas too. And then, just as an example, Amaka playing Hamlet as the first Black woman to play Hamlet here, and I am for some reason understudying her, and that speaks to that tells me, or that I guess you put it best, Beck, is that you couldn't find another Black actress across Canada who was capable of doing that, and I was horrified perhaps at the idea that a white audience would come and see this show on a night where Amaka wasn't feeling great, and they would see me in the role, completely missing the point of what Stratford was trying to do. And then on top of that, to also have now, stick to doing the classical theater that you do, but on the flip side, have a story about the Black woman experience to elevate that a little bit. I've noticed Stratford likes to do companion pieces. And so it would have been really lovely to see not just a Black woman playing Hamlet, but then on the other side, whether it was on the studio or on the Tom Patterson, like let's explore a story that is specific to that experience, and and in that specificity, we just kind of touched on this earlier. Good stories have a universality. It's we don't. I don't need a character necessarily to be Black for me to connect to them. At least growing up and now seeing Black people on stage and having my white friends be like watching a movie like Moonlight and having a friend of mine who's white say, "Wow, like I that rocked my foundation." You know what I mean? Like, because it just set me back to a time where I felt that way. So the same way that we as Black people can viscerally experience the white human stories told through white bodies, I believe the same is true vice versa. And I would like to see these institutions commit to that and not necessarily try and sell them as Black stories, but as human stories.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to riff on that, if I may. When Andre and I were doing Master Harold and the Boys, and we went all over, we went to Montreal to do it, and I was asked the question, you know, you must be so proud, and how do you feel, you know, doing such an incredible piece of theater? And by the way, it was wonderful. I was so moved, and you know, and and I appreciated everything this person had to say, but I could not help but respond simply saying, I am so tired of doing these plays. It is exhausting and it is painful for me to keep doing these plays to educate you.
Mm-hmm.
And you cannot imagine what it's like seeing my fellow. And yes, you know, it's not real, it's the theater, but that spit to the face of Andre was real every night. And our fellow James hated doing it. And I believe he hated doing it as much as I hated seeing him do it.
Mm.
And as a company, there we were in 2018, running around Canada telling this story. I just want to say, it's not my job anymore to tell these stories. I don't want to tell these stories. That's not theater. That's not Black theater to me. There's nothing revolutionary about it. It's traumatic.
Yeah.
So these tropes now of the downtrodden, of the Black community rising up, and you're seeing this and that and that, I don't really care about that anymore. There are better plays out there. There are better stories out there to be told. And if we are going to be put in these mixed casts, then that's an opportunity to tell our stories. I don't feel like I need to be relegated to playing and continuing to educate the masses with this old trope.
Amen.
And, you know, and that's just the way I feel about it. I'm tired of it.
That's the thing.
I had a professor in university named Essie Abayomi, who was from Nigeria. He programmed at Ohio University, where I did my undergrad, a production of The Gods Are Not to Blame by Ola Rotimi, which is a Yoruba retelling of Oedipus. It's an extraordinary work, full of Yoruba dance, Yoruba music. The cast was about 30% Black, maybe. He had a whole bunch of 18, 19, 20-year-old white kids shaking their booties African style and dancing to African songs and singing African music and using African storytelling techniques all over that theater. The audiences were almost 100% white because that's what Ohio University is. And every night there was a dance party at Curtain Call. People leapt out of their seats to join us, right? This was an African story. And white folks were participating fully. And every one of them, we talk about it to this day. All my friends from university talk about this because it was one of the most impactful moments of their life. Because they had never been asked to participate in somebody else's story in that way. My first job out of university, I was working at Great Lakes Theater Festival. And my friend Nina DeMang from Cleveland was playing Reba in You Can't Take It With You. I was playing Donald. And if anybody knows this play, it's extremely problematic. Reba is a domestic and Donald is the live-in boyfriend on relief. He has lines such as, ever notice how these white folks always getting themselves in trouble? And written to be spoken that way.
Mm-hmm.
She said to me one day backstage, so when you were in theater school, you learned about Arthur Miller and Eugene O'Neill and Tennessee Williams, right? And I said, yeah. And she said, but did you all study August Wilson much? Or Gwendolyn Brooks or Langston Hughes, James Baldwin? I said, no, not really at all. And she said, that's your work. Your canon will always have to be twice as big as these white kids. You have to do twice as much work to know who you are, because theaters are going to come to you and ignorantly go, colorblind casting, jump into this role. As Andre just played Tom in Glass Menagerie last year, right? They'll do that all the time. But I also have to know when Katori Hall drops a new play, because there may be something for me in it. We have to have more of a consensus, because only through building that repertoire are white folks going to start to understand what our world is like and going to start to understand what the full canon of theater is like.
That actually kind of takes me to something you all have heard me say over the last couple of days, is that Black famous is not mainstream famous. And this is where people who are watching can educate themselves on the arts and what you don't know. I sit in musical theater rooms and people are spouting off people's entire careers and shows. They know every actor and actress and the lighting designer and the director and the choreographer and what shows they did from the beginning of their career, even where they went to school. And you mentioned some Black Broadway shows or Black theater artists, and they have no idea. No idea. We were set to do Chicago, the largest reimagining of the show in North America. Since it hit Broadway. And if I mentioned the name Brenda Braxton, people wouldn't know. She was Tony nominated for Smokey Joe's Cafe. And she was, to my knowledge, the longest running Velma Kelly on Broadway and on the tour, as well as I believe the first Black Velma Kelly on Broadway and in the tour. So yes, we need to do that work, but we all need to do that work together.
I want to just repeat that sentence because I think it's important. Black famous is not mainstream famous.
Mm-hmm.
Those were your words, right? Just want to make sure they're very clear. Black famous is not mainstream famous. For those of you wondering why our faces are still on your screen, it's because 90 minutes is not enough. I do want to ask. We've talked about programming and the shortfalls in programming that can be helped with outreach. Which outreach, I know what that means. I feel like I've done it before. Is this a problem of will? Is this a problem of education? Is this a problem of capacity and resources? Yes. Outreach sounds simple.
Exactly. That's all
we're worried about selling tickets to what we program on stage, but we can get a grant for outreach. So it's easy to say we can go into a Black community with an outreach program because we can get a grant for it. It'll be paid for. We don't have to worry about it being commercial. Mm-hmm. But if we're going to put something on stage, we're worried about who's going to come. And if we don't know how to access communities that we want to come to those shows, there's no reason to produce the work.
I can speak to that a little bit. One year when I first came, I was approached by the media department to be in Chatelaine magazine. Chatelaine had called the festival and wanted to put forward some new young faces, and it was maybe my second season, maybe 2001, and I was approached to be in the magazine by the marketing people, and I was super excited. I was young and green and beautiful and ready to take on the festival, and I did the shoot, and I was published. It's out there if you want to look, Chatelaine, and 2-page spread. And then a couple weeks later, the marketing director said to me, "Oh, the Chatelaine thing is getting so much traction. Everyone loves your stuff." And I thought, damn, they're good to wig makers here. Like, I was like, I'm nobody, and here I am in Chatelaine magazine. And she said, "Oh, we're really excited about putting forward a really youthful, fresh face to the festival. Thank you for participating." And it dawned on me, I was tokenized. They were using me to reach, in a half-hearted way, some young Black millennials, maybe, I don't know, but I realized that they weren't interested in me. They were interested in my skin. And I was fooled into participating. It can't be that way anymore.
Our skin is either tokenized or it's invisible. I remember standing at an opening night party my second season here, I think. And I was talking to a friend of mine, Graham Abbey, who was one of the leads in the show that I was in. And our publicity director walked up to us with a camera crew, because I guess CTV or CBC was there. Somebody was there filming things. They walk up and start having a conversation with us. And I thought, oh my God, they want to talk to both of us. No. She grabs Graham by the shoulder, leads him away with the camera, and I was left alone.
Right.
Not even acknowledged. I don't care if they want to do an interview with Graham and not me, but to not even say, hello, can we borrow Graham for a second? Good job in the show tonight. We'd like to interview Graham. Nothing. Literally dragged him away from me while I'm standing there, having just opened a show and suddenly feeling, okay, I don't exist.
Yeah. Well, that's, as I said earlier on, why I left is because I wanted to get to a place where it was impossible for them to ignore me.
Mm-hmm.
That took 9 years.
Mm-hmm.
I left there in 2009, and then I came back to play Coriolanus. And that took a lot of work to make that happen. And like, I had a lot of stuff to do myself to get things moving in that direction. I knew back in 2009, I could have played some of those parts.
Yeah.
But I had to show something. And yeah, I don't know. That's where I am right now.
I've been following our group chat a little bit, and Matthew Brown makes a good point. When he was playing a racialized character in To Kill a Mockingbird, he was all over the place, right? When he was a black man who dies at the hands of, let's not forget, police violence.
Yeah.
He was all over the place. Convenient political statement. The next year, he was playing Audrey 2 in Little Shop, and he was denied media opportunities in terms of marketing. And that's a hugely popular character. Who doesn't know the plant from Little Shop, right? Also, people are bringing up Sarah Affel as Viola in the 12th Night that we did. And Sarah is playing Viola. It's the lead. She's the story you follow.
All's well that ends well.
That's right. Sarah's playing Viola, but Brent Carver made the bus alone. Who decides when it's convenient for us to be out front or behind?
Yeah.
It's convenient when it is a political statement that people can easily jump behind, right? Like, there's the image of a black man who was killed by police brutality. As if it's some revolutionary statement to be like, I'm against that, when in reality it's commodifying our deaths, our bodies.
And convenient when it's also palatable to a majority white audience.
Mm-hmm.
And I hope that after this conversation, posters are going to come out, and I hope that audiences come to the show and go, wait, what? Because that's what I was doing before this is my first year with the company. Before that, I was sitting in the audience going, oh, they weren't, where's the poster person? Oh, and why isn't it the lead character? Oh, that was confusing for me as an outsider. And then you jump in and you go, shoot, oh, I see. We've done a really good zoom in on the festival. I want to zoom out for a moment. And would anyone like to speak to other statements that have come out from other theater companies? Statements of allyship, performative or otherwise, in your opinion. But I think there was a moment where that was happening all over Instagram, and they don't all look the same. And I think that that's important.
I just joined Instagram yesterday, so I'm going to take a backseat on this one.
And I don't know how to get Instagram or Twitter on my dial phone, so
Rotary.
Yeah.
The first part of truth and reconciliation is the truth. And it's as far as I've seen, the Stratford Festival among predominantly white institutions is unique in claiming responsibility for their perpetuation of white supremacy.
Exactly.
They're the only ones that have said,
right.
we've been responsible for this. So for my money, all of these other statements are a bunch of bullshit, because you can't claim allyship with me if you don't acknowledge you've hurt me in the past.
Mm-hmm.
You can't claim being on the path to allyship with me unless you understand that we need to settle some shit.
Thank you so much, Evie. Robert, did you?
I didn't mean to have the final word on that. It's just.
Oh, no. I didn't know if I saw your head peek up.
Me?
Yeah.
I did, but I lost my train of thought on that.
That's okay. You know what? We've been chatting for a while now. We have just over 10 minutes left, and before we do wrap up, I want to do a sort of 1 minute wonder question, the 1 minute wonder question, and I want to hear from each of you, because, like I think E.B. said, we have the ear today. We have casting creatives. We have the board. We have senior staff and management, administration, those big hitters we're talking about, the people who are holding the purse strings, our friends and family. So what do you want to say? So, and if I may be so bold as to request an actionable from each of you. So what is something that the festival can do? Because I do believe it's important to finish this with some hope and some doables. I called this my Yes We Can style hope section. But actionables that really can be tracked, because it is my intention to write them down and see what happens after. Robert, I see your hand.
Yeah, I'm going to make it brief because we talked about the different demographics and generations of the festival here on this panel. And as one of the newer members, I was set to do a brand new musical where when I read the script to audition, you know, you read for context, and there was a line in there, and it's a new work, so things get lost in translation. Don't look for this line when the show comes, but there was a line in there where the character introduces himself as Eric Benet. For those who don't know, he's a popular R&B artist, but you can call me Brent. And then I had to scroll back, and I was like, wait a minute, am I looking at this right? And I realized that I was seen. That they had cast, that the character was written as a Black man and as a gay man, and so I want to acknowledge that the festival has started that with that work, and that I am representation of that work, and so they can continue to do that as well.
August Wilson, Susan Laurie Parks, Athol Fugard. Those are the stories I want to tell.
I think that in terms of moving forward, I reiterated this earlier, that the festival and other arts institution need to demand that the staff and the actors and anyone who works for us in the theater in any capacity be at least able to satisfy basic human rights laws. You need to have people who can do the things you need us to do for everyone. And you need to have us in the room and listen when we tell you what you're doing is not okay.
You need to. Go ahead.
Go ahead. I would like to see more people of my skin tone, and any skin tone between me and whatever the whitest. Sorry, the only name that's come, Mitt Romney is for some reason in my head. Like whatever, you know what I mean? I want to see more of those kinds of colors and faces, not just in the rehearsal room acting alongside me, but I want to see them. I want to see more of those faces direct. Like, I mean, this theater has, God, how many shows running at during any given season, and I'm sure like you could cover so many different people directing different stories and people in different positions in the theater too, so that when I'm walking in, it's not just a sea of white faces who are working in these offices, and just the colors kind of like concentrated in the rehearsal room for as actors, basically.
Communication. If you want us to stick around, you need to communicate with us. Since I've been here, the turnover of actors of color, particularly women of color, has been extraordinarily high. So keeping those people needs to be a priority. You need to understand the value that they bring to an organization, that longevity. If you're going to be touting yourself as an advocate of mentorship, you need to have mentors around who you trust, who trust you. Otherwise, their advice to their mentees is going to be, get the hell out of here.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Yeah. And I bring this to you particularly from Manise Peter, who she and I talked about this last night at great length, because she got involved in a lot while she was here. She spoke up a lot while she was here. And then she suddenly wasn't asked back. And there was no conversation around why she wasn't asked back. It was that same thing the festival does every year, every August. Every company member looks like they want to eat each other because the question is in the air. Who's coming back? Am I on the chopping block? What's happening? There is no communication around what the thinking is behind that, right? If they had been able to communicate with Manice to say, we value you. And I don't just mean speak it. I mean, show it, that you are valued. You have a place in this community. We don't have a role for you in the season next year. Okay. But let's talk about future years. Let's talk about where you fit into as a piece of this puzzle, an integral piece of this puzzle. Theater organizations need to know that the human capital is way more important than the physical plant. I don't care if it's a $100 million theater. 2 years ago, when we almost opened the Tempest on opening night, we had a bomb threat. A bunch of us were gathered out front of the bandshell in Queen's Park. We could have done that show.
Right there, yeah.
Right there and then. We could have. Because that's what it takes to do a show are the artists, not the building. Sure, we wouldn't have the Harpy. But it's okay. We'll have the Harpy next week. For tonight, we can still tell a story because it's what we do.
I think it's really heartening. Sorry, Andre.
No,
I'm really encouraged to have watched on film the 2015 production of Hamlet and been, you know, a little tight in the chest because, you know, the center of the action was a homogenous community, all white faces and bodies, and literally around the edges, kind of framing the action for all these brown-skinned women and men. And I thought, you know, to now be invited sort of into the center means something has shifted, hopefully. I think it's a good thing. But you have to also, like Ngaba was saying, invite the experience of the person that you're having say these words into the show. You know, it's not. I'm not just on the outside. Someone new. It's deeper than that.
Yeah.
So I guess I would say lean into the discomfort, lean into not knowing how to support us, ask us, invite those uncomfortable conversations to happen, because otherwise it's just empty gestures, you know. It's just lipstick on a pig, as they say.
And don't take offense when we don't have the strength or energy to answer in that moment.
Hear, hear.
And I also think what's amazing about, you know, we've been having these conversations for years and years, but something feels different this time. And something that's different is the amount of resources being passed around. So, you know, maybe you don't have to be asked as much because there are piles of resource packages being distributed across my Facebook, Instagram, Gmail, everything right now. We have to hear from Andre. We're still waiting to hear from Alan. We're still waiting to hear from
Kimberly.
Really?
Yeah.
Well,
Go ahead, Andre.
Well, I guess one thing for me is, as having played Coriolanus 2 years ago, one thing I had to, I guess, put forward is that I don't want to be your past Coriolanuses. Men I respect, Tom McCamus, Comfior, Len Cariou back in the 80s, but let's be open to the idea of what this new face or this new being can bring to the play that you have not seen. So that's what makes theater interesting. That's why we keep doing these plays over and over again with different people. So let's be open to the experiences behind the people stepping into these roles. and to also at the minimal level to just check yourself across the board. Everybody in the theater, everyone across the world, check yourself, check your heart. The theater is about telling human stories to connect people together. I think not to tear them apart, to bring us together. Because at the end of the day, we are all human beings. So this is a simple thing, right? And we're still trying to get that message across.
I think taking responsibility for the trauma of the colonizer and the trauma of the colonized when we present theater is incredibly important. I think it does the audience a disservice to say you're a racist if you judge the actor because they are of color and they are not what you are used to seeing. I don't think we're there yet. I think the allyship is working together. It's, to quote TC, it's a two-way street. We're doing two-way theater. We cannot take anything for granted at this point. And I feel that that's the biggest issue right now. We're taking so much for granted. Our Black bodies are being taken for granted, for sure, but I believe these organizations are also taking the audience for granted.
Yeah.
And saying, here it is, take it. And for any artist, you know you have just so much time to get the audience on your side. And if they're so busy going, oh, Juliet's Black, oh, she really is Black, then that's a lot of time taken away from the play itself. So I do feel it's the institution's responsibility to present bodies of work and say, ladies and gentlemen, these are the players. And we're bringing you something that you've never seen before. So in that way, I feel like bringing us together, it is the purpose of theater, but how we do it is the question. And it has to be done with care.
Can you ask the question one more time, please?
Absolutely. You, Kimberly, have the ear. I'm going to repeat it exactly because I wrote it down. The cast and creatives, the board, senior staff and management, administration, the big hitters, those who hold the purse strings, and likely friends and family. So this is just a 1-minute wonder. What do you want to say? And I asked the group, if I may be so bold, I would love that to include an actionable. So something that the festival can do and something that they can do and it can be tracked. That's a lot of pressure though. Answer is
I feel like an outsider. I mean, I've been inside. I am an alumni. It's challenging for me to speak more thoughtfully because I haven't experienced it lately.
Yeah, reshape it however you see.
Okay, can I?
Yes, because your perspective is necessary.
Well, you're very lovely to me, thanks. So this week, watching all of this, I've been silent, watching this for the past 2 weeks because there have been so many voices. I didn't have anything, a new window to offer into anything. And so I didn't feel like I needed anything, but what was brewing in my head was a poem called Get a Black Friend. It was just spinning and bouncing around in my head. Get a Black friend. If you don't understand what's happening right now, you either are not a friend to me or are not listening to me, or you do not have a Black friend. Get a Black friend. If you want to understand what's happening, but you know it's not happening to your body, come hang with me. Come have a coffee with me at work. Listen to what I'm saying. I won't tell you, I won't spill out my blood on you. That's spilled out enough. But you will hear in the way that I talk about my day and my life, all of the obstacles that I have, and you will understand the part that you play in it or that you witness. Get a Black friend. If there are no Black people in your circle, why is that? Who do you work with? Who do you associate with? Who do you go to religious things with? What clubs do you belong to or not to? If we are not there, you need to understand that. And if you are comfortable with that, you need to understand that. Get a Black friend. Love a Black person. And we won't have to even point you to half of these resources and websites and books. We do art and you understand characters. Why do you live beside me and not understand me?
Amen.
Anyways, that's my thought.
Thank God it reshaped my question. I can't begin to thank you properly for 2 hours of necessary, important, interesting, riveting conversation. I want to remind people that are watching that we feel strongly about our Indigenous brothers and sisters who were included in our invitation to receive their own week of festival communication and a Meet the Festival format broadcast so that they may say their piece unadulterated by the specific struggle of others, which is what we were given. And our hope is that through this open channel, we can have a new type of dialogue with the festival, the community, the patrons, the artisans, administrators, crew, and staff to speak our hearts and to seek reconciliation.
Can I add one more thing back?
Absolutely, Evie.
We've been remiss not to acknowledge the land that we're all sitting on. We're calling in from all different corners of Turtle Island, and we're speaking to all different corners of Turtle Island. And it's very important that we recognize that while we are not exactly settlers here, because we were brought here, we do have a part in the custody of this land, and we owe the previous custody of this land to First Nations peoples across Turtle Island. And we stand in solidarity with them because our struggle and their struggle have been running in tandem ever since this shit started. So thank you for giving us this space. We hope we can share this space with you on the 21st of June when you have your panel. And I'm honored to know all of my Indigenous friends, as I'm sure everybody else in this panel and in this group is. It's very humbling to be in this struggle together. So thank you.
And just to reiterate, we will be looking at the comments that have been happening on this live stream over the next few days. I hope everyone on the panel now naps and eats. I love you all. And like we said, this is a call to action. This is not a 1 week wonder. Thank you so much for watching, and we can't wait to continue the conversation and make change. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.